This is Crowmart with TGN, welcoming you to another World of Warcraft Cataclysm beta video. This is part 18 of the 22-part series, DPS Rundown, and today we're covering the Fire Mage. Now the first question that you're probably asking, at least it was the first one I asked, was, are you going to use Frostfire Bolt or Fireball? And I'm going to test both specs. Now, it's important to note that there's no way for you to pick there's no separate spec for the two spells because of the lack of hybrid specs, and because none of these talents in Frost, besides obviously Piercing Ice, actually will affect your Frostfire Bolt. Shatter would be nice if you could actually freeze things, and you generally can't. I mean, adds, that's about it. Now for talent choices, you've got about 3 talents to play with, 2 just to get down to the bottom of fire, then 1 extra one, because your Piercing Ice, Arcane Concentration, Netherwind Presence are given. You're going to have serious mana problems with this build, so you just absolutely don't want to compromise on either of these 2 talents that are made for mana. For your extra 3 talents, I went for Improved Flame Strike because it is very, very powerful for AoE, and just 1 point left over for Pyromaniac because 5% spell haste is nothing to sneeze at, but you could easily dump these points and grab Blazing Speed and Molten Shields. That combination gives you basically a sprint on demand. You could also grab like 2 in Impact and 1 in Fire Blast, or 2 in Impact and 1 in I don't know, 1 in Pyromaniac maybe. That's another great AoE. I mean, there's a lot of options here, but we're doing single target tests, and Impact would actually make it very difficult to do a single target test, so I have to make sure I spec out of that for this test. Now, glyphs are pretty simple. Major and minor are just, there's nothing to, they don't matter, so just ignore them. Molten Armor for Prime is pretty much obvious if you're going to be using Molten Armor, which you really should be. Keep in mind that you don't have to worry about capping spell crit like you do with Frost, and but you still want as much spell crit as possible for Hot Streak. Pyroblast, again, for Hot Streak, just allows you to get more crits with Pyroblast itself, and that gives you bigger ignites. And then for your last Prime Glyph, you're going to use whichever spell you're using as your main nuke, Frostfire Bolt or Fireball. Pretty simple. Now, keep in mind with Frostfire Bolt, the main reason you'd use this for that spell is for the increased damage 15%, not for the dot. The dot is actually terrible. Certainly the fact that Fireball is going to give you occasional more ignites, occasional hot streaks, well eclipses anything you could have got from that dot. So we're going to be directly comparing the nuke damage, and we're going to see which one does more damage and which one has higher DPS overall. So the rotation is incredibly simple. It's probably the simplest one in the game, even simpler than Fury Warriors, believe it or not. All you got to do is manage 3 simple cooldowns. You've got your Flame Orb, Mirror Image, like you do with any spec, and lastly, Combustion. And Combustion kind of sucks, and honestly, the damage doesn't really matter if you wait to use it for the perfect time. I just try to use it after Pyroblast, that's it. This Pyroblast dot's pretty effective, and I always open with a Pyroblast, that way I can use it right away. So, other than that, you've got 2 debuffs to manage. You've got your Improved Scorch, or whatever they call it now, Critical Mass, and you've got your Living Bomb. And that's it. So, let me just open ignoring cooldowns for a minute. Okay, I just didn't give me a Critical Mass. There we go. Good job, game. Start spamming that Frostfire Bolt or whatever your main nuke is. I'll test Frostfire Bolt first, then test Fireball. So anyway, as you can see, that's it. I mean, I just showed you the whole rotation. You just do that and then the cooldowns, and that's it. You just sit there and spam 1 nuke. So it's obviously not a very complicated rotation. So I'm going to go ahead and let those drop off. And for the record, the Fireball version is exactly the same. You just swap your Fireball with your Frostfire Bolt and swap your Glyph and do the same thing over again. So I'm going to go ahead and get this mic out of my way so I can do a real test. Okay, and we're back, and the number was 7,700 before Recount started dropping off due to dots and whatnot. So what I did was I just used all my mana, including Evocate and Mana Gem, and I wound up with 7,700, ignore that, and only about 110,000, or 1.1 million damage, I mean, which isn't great. It's definitely worse than Frost on the longevity, but still did okay, I guess. let's take a look at the breakdown. Now, I had a ton of spike damage in the beginning due to some lucky hot streak procs, so it took a while to get level off to the more proper DPS number. And also just using the cooldowns at the beginning, of course, that always makes a big difference. I did about 40% of the damage through Frostfire Bolt. Frostfire Bolt dot is all the way down at 1.3%. So it's so poor that even if you were to, do 3 Frostfire Bolts and then fill them with Fireball and then refresh Frost, that's no good, because in order to do that, you'd have to use the FFB glyph, and then you wouldn't be able to use the Fireball glyph, or you wouldn't be able to use the Pyroblast glyph. That's not an option. For Living Bomb, made up another big chunk of your damage and Ignite. Now, these numbers are scarily similar. Every single time I do this test, they're like exactly the same, so that's not too much of a surprise. And then Flame Orb, for being a free spell, isn't bad at all. Let's see what else we have here. I only got 4 Pyroblasts during the duration. Like 2 of them were in the very beginning. It's kind of weird. Combustion did almost nothing, although it is also a free spell, so I guess I shouldn't rag on it too much. But that's kind of my point. It only did about 5% damage, 3.5 and 1.5, and I managed to use it at what I consider almost optimal. I mean, I had an Ignite, though it wasn't a Pyroblast Ignite, and I had all my other dots up too. So I would say that it's just not good enough to even worry about getting the perfect setup before you use it. Just use it on cooldown, and the damage you'd gain from using it an extra time or two during a long fight would more than make up for the lost opportunity on the perfect rotation, or whatever you want to call it. So, should you use Mage Armor? Well, crit is too important to the spec to use Mage Armor, so I would say no. But I don't know. I guess you could maybe use it for for heroics, I guess. So that so you can use your AoE abilities liberally on trash packs. I don't know. That's just, I don't know. I don't know when you use Mage Armor for the spec. It's not something I would consider. Because see, with Frost, you can always cap out your crit, and then you won't even need Molten Armor, and that would give you the ability to use Mage Armor, but not happening with Fire. So I promised we were going to test it with Glyph of Fireball, and I'm almost out of Dust of Disappearances from all this. I had like 20 before I started doing this video. There we go. So I got my Glyph of Fireball. My Molten Armor dropped off, as it does all the damn time. Okay, I'm going to get my stuff cleared out, get ready to go, and do a quick test, do the exact same rotation, everything else, all my cooldowns are ready, and we'll see if I do any better. Okay, and that's it. We are out of mana, out of evocations and mana gems and all that stuff. So let's see if we actually got anywhere. The DPS was about 7,100 when I stopped before it started ticking down. Now that's surprisingly worse than Frostfire Bolt. What's up with that? Well, I got the same number of Pyroblasts, so that's not it. I used the same number of combustions. I used the same number of cooldowns. And I lasted about the same. I even, look at that. That's like perfect. I did exactly 1.1 million damage. I mean, the test couldn't be more even. So there could be the RNG factor. I mean, if there's something other than an imbalance between Frostfire Bolt and Fireball, then I don't see it here. I mean, that's the only other thing I could say is just really bad RNG. So I'm going to go ahead and say that Frostfire Bolt's doing the most damage right now. And I'm seeing all the Fire Mages in my raids using Frostfire Bolt. Now, that may be just because they feel like it, but I think that it's because Frostfire Bolt's simply better right now. Now, you might think, well, wait a minute, Fireball has extra crit chance, shouldn't they give you more hot streaks and all that? Yes, but if you look at the average Fireball damage, it's about 9k, which is actually a little bit lower than Frostfire Bolt when it's glyphed. Frostfire Bolt was a little bit higher than that. So what's happening is that even though Fireball is creating slightly more, just the extra damage from Frostfire Bolt is causing it to win out. Remember, Frostfire Bolt was 42 point something percent of DPS, while Fireball was less, even with the extra crit. So, server shut down. I better finish up. So, if they don't want you to use Frostfire Bolt, then they have not really succeeded, because Frostfire Bolt basically is going to replace Fireball once you get it, when you're leveling, and as far as I can tell. But that's okay, though. I mean, I kind of like Frostfire Bolt. I actually preferred it when it was more of a hybrid spec that you would do, and they don't support hybrid specs anymore. So maybe they should just put more frost damage talents up here, so you can do like a spec where you don't even get Netherwood Presence or Arcane Concentration. You just put 10 points in Frost, and to make your Frostfire Bolt spec more worth it. I don't know. That's how I would do it anyway. To create that magical fourth spec with Frostfire Bolt, but that's the way things are now. Frostfire Bolt, slightly better than Fireball. Granted, there's some RNG in these tests, and we only did about 1.1 million. I prefer to do like 3 to 4 million damage, but that's all we can do because we're running out of mana. So that's just the way it is right now. So my final conclusions about the Fire Mage, ignoring the issue between the two main nukes, is that I just found it to be incredibly boring and not fun in the slightest. Hot streak procs don't come up enough. They come up less often than Brain Freeze, and then when Frost, you also have the Finger of Frost to keep things interesting, and you have Deep Freeze, or not Deep Freeze rather, but the regular Freeze with your Water Elemental that allows you to use your Fingers of Frost on command. So I think that Frost is just way more fun than Fire. Granted, there's some nice talents like Cauterize that make Fire rating interesting, but I wouldn't rate as Fire right now. I'd still rate as Frost, and maybe Arcane. We'll see how Arcane looks for the next episode of DPS Rundown. Alright, well, thank you for watching. As always, this is Cromar with TGN asking you to please rate, please comment, and please subscribe.